Okay. Uh, Welcome. Uh, how do I am learning as we do this. So maybe if I do one of these, that makes it easier. Is the voice a little bit better? I turned up the mic some. All right. Cool. Well, let's get started here. I figured today we would. I was going to do this on my own, of course, and just merge this 1.0 roadmap and then start filing issues. And I thought, well, it might be cool to have people watch and discuss, and we can talk about where Hyper's going and what issues we're making. Maybe people are interested in how the project management side of things works, or just watching, uh, laughing at my funny voice, anything like that. Um, so I guess I'll start with a little intro. Um, First of all, this year we want to make Hyper 1.0. We know that a lot of people ask, they want the stability. They want to be able to, some people put trust in, oh, it's a 0.x thing and I shouldn't use in production, even though, lots of people use this stuff in production already, but I get it. Also, people are starting to make things that depend on Hyper and they also want to go 1.0. Like the AWS SDK or something like that. So it's a really good idea. And throughout the several years of development, 7, 8 years, um, we've learned a lot of things. So it's kind of time to clean it up and go 1.0. I came up with a timeline to make this happen uh, earlier this year, back in February, and part of the goals or the I don't know milestones, I guess you call these, was to first define the vision, like some sort of framework to make the decisions and where are we actually going and what should Hyper even look like. Uh, and we did that with making this vision doc. Came up with some tenets basically. How do we decide decisions, make decisions? How do if anything is wait okay we want to do all of these things. But if there's ever a thing that maybe, we can either pick between being correct or fast. Something makes us fast, but it makes us less correct, then we'd, be correct first. So we came up with these principles that order how decisions are made. You can read a whole lot more details about them there. And then this sort of, use cases, who actually uses Hyper and how, why, which helped to define actually how we got these and the shape of how Hyper would look. So then the next step was, okay, that's what Hyper should look like. What? Let's look at what Hyper is right now and come up with a plan to get there. And that's what this roadmap is. So this was published almost 2 months ago. Got some nice comments. We had some discussions, also private discussions, and in Discord and Slack and so forth. And we're ready to go now. And that would mean that we're at this step, plan the work. I know I'm a little late, but things in life happened. That's okay. Um, I was somewhat vague in the times that we'd ship this other stuff, so it still works out. So we're now going to do this step, plan the work, where I merge this and we file issues based off the roadmap, and let's see what happens from there. So let's merge. We're done. All right, cool stream, guys. Thanks for coming. No, um, let's grab that and use that to file the issues. Easy, all set. Um, It's actually kind of a fun read to figure out like the parts of Hyper that are not great now. But the part that we're focused on for this stream, kind of here and below, because this is kind of the proposed what we'll be doing. You know, the design, kind of a couple of like more fundamental things, and then like what the public API actually turns into. So I'm going to focus on that. Don't need these anymore. And I've been playing with this new projects thing. I'm not sure that it makes anything a whole lot better, so I might just file issues. Um, okay, so yeah, first one here is that we need to first idea that was described is that we're going to have the public hyper crate and a bunch of extra goodies are going to go live in hyperutil. Things that basically aren't ready. They're not stable, or basically not stable, yeah. Or some things that like maybe you're slightly too opinionated, but they're still super useful for most people. We'll go and throw it in a hyperutil crate. Kind of like Tokyo and Tokyo Util. You know, Tokyo's stable, everything is in there is solid. Tokyo Util has some cool ideas that are very useful, but hopefully you don't need to like expose them in your public API. That's what we're going for here. So we're gonna create hyperutil, create um, none of these are actually relevant. I probably need to make a hyperutil thing, or I could make another repo. That's actually a good point. I know there's many projects put multiple crates in the same repo, and in many ways it's really helpful. And yet, at the same time, I don't I don't like that tags are then split between different crates. I really like the pure every tag is a release of hyper, as opposed to a tag might be a release of hyper, might be a release of hyperutil, might be, I don't know. Um, maybe it's a pedantic thing that I care about, but so decide whether to make it a repo or a subdirectory. Um, and I'll just grab this link. All right, projects. I mean, we'll try it, see what happens, but new issue. I mean, these are all feature requests. I'm not filing bug reports on myself yet. Sometimes I do that. So what do we have? Body is removed into distinct types. That right. That actually is already an issue. This was an idea like a year ago, so we already have that one. That's good. We need. Oh, that's right. We're going to rename the. Since we're getting rid of the concrete body type and breaking it up into pieces, we can now actually just export the trait as body instead of HTTP body, because that's a weird stutter that I don't really like. 1.0. Yeah, sure. This one is body. That's simple. And that'll be easy-ish. Will Hyper only contain low-level API? Will current high-level stuff go to hyperutil? Yes, that's the plan. The idea in the roadmap is the connection APIs, like client con and server con. Those things are a lot. They're a lot more expressive, give you a lot more control, and those will be the things that are mostly in Hyper. There's also a proposal to actually break them up a little bit so that way there's an HTTP1 connection, HTTP2 connection, potentially eventually HTTP3 connection, and then have a like auto version sort of thing. And then the other stuff, the pooling client, and then on the server the accept stuff, it's kind of unstable, and sometimes people um, want more control than that. So we're going to move those things which are useful to many people into hyperutil, but we no longer have to worry about like, oh, is the DNS API perfect, or is the accept API correct, because currently it's not. We don't have to worry about that to stabilize Hyper. So it's always fun to have people watch you type. When people are watching, then when people are watching me, then I can never type. But cool. All right. There's also this cool one that we're figuring out, the body trait. There's actually I've been talking with a few people. How do we make the body trait um, kind of forwards compatible? And what I mean is, right now it works with body data and body trailers. And in an HTTP1, that's pretty much all there possibly could be. In HTTP2, there's the potential for people to extend HTTP2 with more frame types for a stream, in HTTP3 especially. It has the same thing. You can have more frame types, but with the current methods, there'd be no real way for us to add the ability to get those types. And I mean that in two ways. One, say there's a new frame type that is standardized and everyone's using it. Um, we couldn't add like a poll priority or something like that. Because I mean we could with a default implementation of to do nothing, but that gets kind of unwieldy. The other side is if someone has specific frame types that aren't registered, but their implementation is using them. Uh, we don't want people to have to wait on Hyper to eventually accept them, or maybe they don't get standardized and we would never accept them. Well, then how do you ever get those frames off of the body? So, I've talked with a few people about how could we make the body type be more kind of just like a pull a frame, and then you can inspect the frame and get if it's a data type or trailers or um, alt service or some other frame type. But I also want to make sure that this is um, still fast. Don't really want to be doing boxed boxed trade objects. So it's something to figure out. And I'm going to file that issue here. And I can't really link to it. Well, whatever. It's always fun just trying to come up with things to say while people watch. But so yeah, that can be forwards. actually. I think there is down in unresolved questions, right? Perfect. Oh, good body trait. Yeah, there we go. I think I can link to this one. What a fragile link. I hope no one changes that title. Cool. This, well, it's a feature and body, but it kind of needs a RFC or a proposal for us to come up with. It's also going to be kind of hard. Cool. Throw that in Hyper 1.0 and Milestones 1.0 because GitHub uses both, and well, whatever. Let's scroll back up here. Client. So that's all the body stuff we're going to do. The client, that's right, we're going to chop out the high-level client stuff. A lot of this is just a bunch of snipping. Remove. No, that's not right. Not remove. Move to hyperutil. It's not kind of medium. Picking an effort is kind of just rolling a die. So the hyper client and support modules should be removed and from hyper in hyperutil. Okay. And then the other side, that's right, we're going to take the con module. That's kind of going to be kind of the main API. But we're also going to do some other stuff. One second here. Are you going to file issues for what HPBody needs for 1.0? Would be nice if that crate was in the same repo. Well, yes. I mean, that previous issue about if the body trait could handle other frames, that kind of is basically HP body. But dealing with issues across a whole bunch of repos kind of sucks. So I just filed it here. We could put HP body in the same repo, in this repo, but then we have that, my my pedantic complaint of tags, and at the same time, there's the idea that HTTP body is not necessarily tied to hyper, but I know some people feel like it de facto is, but that's the idea, is that you could just make stuff use HTTP and HTTP body and then not care if it was using hyper or some other HTTP implementation that was created at some point, and your library wouldn't have to know. So I don't know. Therefore, a non-answer. What was I filing? That's right. The con stuff. Okay. Tower HTTP does that. Does what? Yes. Yeah, so you could, yeah, Tower HTTP just uses HTTP and HTTP body. So while it works with Hyper, it doesn't always. Um, you could use Tower HTTP with some other implementation if you wanted to. But why would you not want to use Hyper, right? No, I know. There's reasons. Um, so the client con types, which is send request and connection. And there's an important reason that we're doing this. Well, there's a few reasons. The most important one is, again, forwards compatibility. Right now, the connection type requires the I/O to be, async read, async write, and that's worked excellently for a while. But as we start exploring HTTP3, there's an H3 crate where we're exploring it. There's, HTTP3 goes over quick, and quick is a little bit different than just an I/O stream. It's not just read and write. It's got the idea of a connection and then being able to create streams from the connection and being able to send different codes on those streams and on the connection. The streams can be just unidirectional or bidirectional. So Quick has a little bit more that's needed. We can't just use HTTP3 over an async read, async write. So that makes the current connection type, which requires the I/O type to be, async read, async write, to be, it doesn't allow us to add HTTP3. So by splitting these types, by splitting the connection into an HTTP1 and an HTTP2, we can also then create an HTTP3, which doesn't ask you, hey, give me an I/O type that's async read, async write. Instead, it'll be give me an I/O type that is quick. Any quick implementation would be fine. And then what we'll have is the current kind of connection type that exists up at client con will probably be something more like auto connection or something like that. And it's not going to be generic over an IO type, but rather it's going to be kind of like an either type, like an either connection sort of. So then it can just be, either HTTP1 or HTTP2 or HTTP3, and the generics are inside those types. And so we don't have to worry about this auto connection or either connection, knowing about is it a TCP stream or is it quick, or we can go forwards and not have to make a Hyper 2.0 once we finally figure out HTTP3. Um, Another benefit is you can either types are always super useful, but if you don't need the second part of the either, then you just have a branch all the time. If you have either A or B and you only ever need A, well then you're always using it, branching on the enum to figure out it, just to get the A and then to work on it. So by making them separate, we can also say if someone's like, what, hey, I never ever need HTTP2, I only need HTTP1, they never have this branch inside of, oh, is it HTTP1 or HTTP2 inside? So there's kind of two benefits. Send request, I forgot what I was writing. I can probably fill this in more later. Client. This will be hard. I mean, not super hard, but not less than a day's worth of work is kind of what I throw medium into. Um, okay. The error stuff. This is fun. Right, so we're keeping hyper error. I guess I can talk a little bit about what we're doing here. One of the things that I want to do is make the source part that comes out of the error. So I know there's kind of two schools of thought in Rust. One is just give me an enum and let me match on everything, and clearly I can handle any error that ever exists. And then the other school of thought, which I have, is that I give you an opaque struct, and you can inspect some things about it, but I don't believe that you can handle every single error that exists. And if you could, then that's impossible for me to ever say, you know what, there's this other unique error case that now I need to break you because it's an enum. And sure, there's non-exhaustive now to try and help with that. Um, but if you ever use non-exhaustive on an enum with fields on it, then you can't really add new fields or even decide, you know what, the structure of this variant is slightly wrong. I want to optimize it. You can't do that. So Hyper uses an opaque struct, and we just offer, if something happened, we throw some stuff in the source. Like if it came from HTTP2, there we'd say, hey, there's a hyper error, there was a connection sent, there was an error sending the request, and the source will include the HTTP2 related info. The problem with that is that since you can downcast to a type, you can check, oh, is this an H2 error? Downcast it, and you would have included in your own crate, H2 version 0.2 or something like that. Well, ideally, we've completely hidden the versions of the internal HTTP implementations. So if we then say, okay, H2 is going to do a big refactor and we're going to release H2 0.3, and we update it, and you're still relying on H202 and you're trying to downcast, then we've broken you, right? Maybe not at compile time, but at runtime, and that sucks. So first piece that we're going to do is if it comes from if the source comes from a trait, not a trait, a crate that we don't want to make a public dependency, then it'll just be opaque, meaning you're gonna be able to get the source, but it's gonna be a type that you can't name. You can print it, but you can't downcast it to a certain, H2 0.2 or H3 0.1 or something like that. But you can print it. And I realized that, oh, but I need to be able to handle, a canceled HTTP2 canceled reset stream. That's what the other piece is for. We're also going to make it a little bit easier to have a public code in Hyper's errors. Right now, in 0.14, there's a couple of like is connect, is write error, is body error, and those kind of work, and they're great for forward compatibility. We can add more variants and still make them, is connect errors, but they're also annoying to match on. So the second piece is while we wouldn't expose exactly what version of the H2 crate is, we would translate, when the error was made, that it's a certain kind of HTTP2 error. Okay, we'll have a public code that you can check for. So you can still manage errors, hopefully the ones that you're looking for, and we can still make internal changes and not break everyone. So let me file some of those issues. I'm surprised no one's yelling at me that they want enum variants, but I know that that's a frequently asked thing. Oh, David's. Oh, okay. I actually haven't taken a look at Axum Air, but yeah. So is it it's a struct, or do you use box air? Kind of like Tower uses box air, but that also can have problems. Um, it's a wrapper around box air. Okay, cool. I guess error handling in Rust is still, you know, a decade later, still not great because the the obvious thing to use is a box error, but the annoying thing is that a box error doesn't implement error. You can call all error trait methods on it because it's a trait object, but it itself does not implement error because of some special rule, which is that any any type that implements error can be converted into a box error by boxing it, thanks to a specific uh, generic impl in the standard library. But there's also an implementation of anything can be made from itself by just being passed itself, right? So box error from box error is just moving itself. And so you can't have box error implement error because then you'd have the conflict. The reason that's annoying is then you have things like anyhow or was it ire error? I pronounce it ire. Um, or failure, any of the other types that try and make error handling nicer, they all work with types that implement error, which means that if you return a box error, then suddenly nothing works anymore. Um, and it's horrible, and people have complained, and we've tried to make things work, and uh, who knows, maybe in 2034. Um, okay, it's an error. Mm, that's probably medium. Milestone 1.0. Cool. And we also need to make an error code type. Good point. I No, it's a display imp, a special kind of display, which is devious. You're right. Uh, I did talk about it in the roadmap that formatting is in conflict with the expected norm, but then I didn't include what we were going to do about it here. That was an omission. So, well, we'll just make an issue about it right now. Figure out. Where's that roadmap? Yeah, we can link to that. link here. What is it? Is it the errors working group? Errors WG? I think those are the two options, right? Either we do it the way other people think it should be done, or we influence the working group to have a way. It's not that I want all errors to always print always their source, but I think I played with this a few years ago, and I've never gotten around to joining the errors working group and making a proposal. But I think that you should be able to do like the print line, and then what is it? Uh, like um, plus 3 or something like that, and that would print the error and 3 errors down. And then maybe you would do this would make it comma separated, and if you were to change the format to this, then it would make it new line separated, that sort of thing. I do have a proposal. There it is. I'll just link to it. Yeah, here we go. So if you were to include the plus, then it would say yes, I want the additional error chains, and if you could also even specify how far down the error chain it could go, and then that way this would also be very useful for something like, where am I? Like the opaque thing, because if opaque can't, the thing that I was filing before to hide the actual type, it can't implement source and provide the following chain, because if those things are dependencies we don't want to leak, we can't give out the source. So we would need to be able to, but you need to give out the source in order for these error reporters to print the source chain. So this alternative idea would make it so this thing could work. There. This kind of, we're going to say it needs an RFC, or at least a proposal. Error. I don't know the ease. It needs a proposal, so we don't know how easy or hard that is. Alrighty. What are we doing? What was I doing? Error stuff, right? Yeah. Okay. And internally, I don't know. Make a, this is kind of like how status code works, or the codes in, I think the codes in Tonic, or at least that's how they used to. I think Tonic might have just ditched for an enum. The reason it works this way and for status code in HTTP is that we can't use an enum because there could be codes that come from numbers. Well, I mean, I guess the code here could be an enum then, because we don't really expect to make them from arbitrary numbers. But we'll see. Someone can argue whether it should. Exhaustive enum. Someone can make a case. But if no one does, then I'll just default to this because it's feels slightly safer to expand. In case, I don't know, in case we wanted to add 2 fields to a code or something like that. If it's an enum, we can never do that. But if it's an opaque struct, we could. This is error. It's easy-ish, but no, we'll call it medium because easy I figure is like something that like a complete brand newcomer could do in like less than an hour. I don't think someone who's never touched hypercode before is ready to completely do that. But it's not that intense. All right. Okay. I think that's all the stuff for error. Next up is our runtime module, RT executor. I think stays there. We do need like a timer thing. Because right now the only way to ever set up stuff with timeouts or intervals requires the runtime feature, the cargo feature runtime, which means, and it just automatically assumes that we're talking about Tokio, which works for everyone using Tokio, but makes it impossible to use those things if you're integrating with some other runtime like Fuchsia or I don't know, Krill's runtime or something like that. So making it a trait makes it more extensible, versatile. That's one of the tenets. So add a timer trait to RT module. I'll say it's medium. And put it all in this stuff. And then I'll make a separate, some separate issues around actually using it throughout Hyper. So Could be a separate issue to actually integrate. I mean, what's the point of adding a... Well, it could be easier to do and then to actually use it. Yeah, that's fine. But depends on this. That'd probably be easy, I think. But okay, so those are server and client. And then make another issue that builds off of this one. Um, yeah, and then we can also use this type in hyperutil for the pooling client because you have an interval. You kind of have an interval or a timeout, one or the other, of removing expired connections. But we have some stuff inside Hyper as well, like a read headers timeout and some HTTP2 timeouts, like keep alive timeouts inside HTTP2. And you could imagine a couple of others being added. These are the HTTP2 keep alive interval, the HTTP2, I think I can make these to-dos. Keep alive timeout, the HTTP1 read headers timeout. I can't remember if there's others, but it costs us nothing to add them. So maybe hard. Okay, cool. The server stuff, yeah. So similar with the client. Let me explain a little bit what we're doing. Similar with the client, we're jettisoning the higher level stuff. So the high level hyper server and its related accept trait. We're kicking that out of hyper and putting something similar in hyperutil. The part of the reason is the current accept trait is wrong. It if a connection is accepted, say at the TCP level, and you pulled it from the TCP listener, and you start doing like a HTTPS handshake on it, but that connection is slow because the way the accept trait works, you have to wait for it to, you basically have to wait for it to finish. I guess you could make a smarter one that throws that into some sort of future unordered, but the most people don't. And so as long as it's waiting, uh, welcome Keith. As long as it's waiting for the HTTPS handshake to finish, then any other TCP streams that have been connected but not accepted yet just kind of are stuck waiting, which is horrible. So when people start to use HTTPS, many times, my suggestion is, yeah, don't use hyperserver, use hyperserver con, and handle the accept loop yourself. Um, some things also try and work around it, like Warp tries to work around it by basically making the HTTPS handshake lazy. So it accepts it and says, yeah, sure, here's an HTTPS connection, and the handshake will actually happen on the first read write instead, which is another way of doing it. But that just kind of delays a potential error to a little later. And really, what you should be doing is just setting up a while loop on the TCP acceptor. Once you've got one, spawn a new task that handles the HTTPS or the TLS handshake, and then once that's done, then you create the hyperserver con with a ready I/O. So we're tossing the trait because it's wrong. There might be a way. Yeah, TLS stuff in Axum. I included it in Warp since quite a few people were asking for it, and I said, okay, look, we'll include super basic stuff, and then of course people come along and like, oh, I wish I did this and I did that. No, this is for super basic stuff, and then you want to customize it, then you have to do it yourself, because yeah, it's just every implementation has its own options. Everything's different. Anyways, um, and like the TLS handshake is not actually something interesting to Hyper, so we've just kind of punted that out. But we'll still have something useful in hyperutil to help people, because like 80% of people can probably use the same kind of pattern. Anyways, on to actual filing of stuff now that I've explained a little bit. Um, and let's see if I can link to, did I write how the accept trait is not great? Yeah, sort of here. Okay, server. I mean, removing it is super simple, I guess, but we'll just say it's medium. Throw that into 1.0, 1.0, all the things. And where was I? Server. Oh yeah, we can chop out the adder stream thing. That thing's useless. It was an idea like 4 years ago. Back when we were using like Tokyo-Proto stuff, and it never really exactly. If we're not sure, just make a medium. Uh, but yeah, we can just chop the adder stream out. It has no more value at all. It is just as a TCP stream wrapped in a new type, doesn't do anything extra, and so what ends up happening is you just get binary bloat because you have on the client side you have it using TCP stream, and on the server side you have it using adder stream, and so it compiles the whole generic hyper thing with two different types for no benefit at all. So and this one's probably easy because I mean you're just deleting stuff, I hope. And you don't really need to move anything anywhere. Where's that server? 1.0, all the things. Okay. Yeah, and then the other thing that we're doing with server, I mean, since hyper server is gone, we're really just embracing the con thing. And with the connection types, just like in client, we want to make version specific connections and then have a auto or either whatever connection type as well that does what the current connection type currently does. So that way we can, one, people who only want HTTP1 or HTTP2 or something like that can skip the whole either thing. And two, we can add in HTTP3 without, again, without it needing to be async read, async write. It can be quick. And then the auto or either type, doesn't need to care about that. So can I just like copy and paste the client one and change a few words? I mean, yes, I can because I wrote almost nothing. Cool. Well, connection. There isn't other types. It's just connection. Okay. I have to figure out the whole fallback thing. Well, that's kind of the auto. I should make a new task for that. Server. This one's kinda. Can it be done? I don't know if it can be done in less than a day. Maybe. Maybe if someone's excited and knows what they're doing, they could. Well, I'll just call it hard. Effort measuring is fun, especially in sprint planning. Okay. And, well, we should talk about. I don't think I did this for the client. But so I don't forget. Um, okay. I might throw that in as RFC. Kind of needs a proposal. Gonna be kind of hard. Okay. Now then, that's everything in server. The service stuff. Okay. So we're gonna chop a lot of the service stuff out because, well, kind of confusing. And hyperutil can just provide a wrapper that makes it a tower service, and you can still use tower HTTP and Axum and everything very easily. But if you don't care about that stuff, why should I? Why should you have to learn what pull ready is? Because then you just say, oh, pull ready, just return always ready. Because I don't know why I wouldn't. And then, yeah. So, uh, replace, well, create hyper service trait. Um, I don't have a section for service, but I mean, it's pretty much only for used by the server. So this will be any, many, miny, mo. Maybe medium. You don't need to do any crazy stuff, just replace some types. Do I link to it? Yeah, let's link to it. Okay. We're also removing the make service stuff because that only exists for the hyper server easy builder. And since that's going away, we don't need the make server stuff because, well, we don't need it. And trying to explain what make service is to someone who doesn't even know what a service is, well, that's no fun. That, yeah, make service ref is that was a hack. So actually, I just realized that I hadn't explained another reason why the hyper server stuff is going is that the make service stuff. Um, I was playing around with adding improved tracing support throughout Hyper a month or two ago for a proposal, and noticed that if you tried to say, hey, I want to know everything that happens for a connection, it sounds like that should go in make service. But then, how do I make you be quiet? Bye. Um, you make you try and create a span inside the make service, and that's actually wrong. Oh, of course. Now my phone's buzzing. Um, do not disturb. That's wonderful. So you create a tracing span inside make service, and then you return your service, and it's like, hey, cool. The entire connection lasted 2 nanoseconds because you return the service immediately, and now we have the service and we no longer need the span and trace service. So that was confusing. Okay, no, I want it to last the whole connection. How do I do that? Oh, basically by not using hyperserver and managing the hyperserver con myself. Then you can get a really nice, you wrap a span around the entire connection. Everything is scoped to that span. It's way better. So it was another thing like, oh yeah, make service here sucks. But anyways, the the right make service ref. Um, when we were adding make service to Hyper, we were thinking it'd be cool if when you get a connection, you'd like to get a little bit of data about it. That's what we originally wanted back in Linkerd proxy. We wanted to be able to connect, like the socket address and maybe the TLS search or something like that, and then throw that into a log, some context logger that would get logged with everything that happens for that connection. Basically, exactly what I wanted to do with tracing, but this was a few years ago. And so I wanted to pass just a reference to the socket because I can't give you the socket because then we can't run the HTTP stuff over it. Um, so okay, a make service where the request type is a reference to the connection, and then that messed up lifetimes really bad. So then you need to start learning about the whole like for any ref, any lifetime, do this stuff, but then you add that everywhere, and the bounds just get messier and messier, and you have to start adding that to like multiple of the generics, which is horrible. So then when I had make service ref, I found that I could make the bounds a whole lot nicer. That also meant that when people got there and they're like, "What the heck's a make service ref?" and they're like, "Don't worry about it." And for most people who weren't, making a framework on top of it or trying to make their own code generic over Hyper, if you were just using Hyper, it worked out. But if you wanted to make your own generic thing like Axum, Warp, or some internal thing, then it was just you know the suck. So we're killing that. Long story short, it's going. Mm, I think removing it is pretty easy. I also want to make sure to remove the docs. Well, docs can be a separate thing. Yeah, let's call it docs. Mm, yep, done. What's up here? That's gone. Cool. Cargo feature. Um, cargo features. Yeah. So we can remove some of these now. That's good. Remove the stream stuff. Um, because it only exists in futures core, which is 0.3. There's no way we're going to publicly depend on anything that is 0. Whatever. Um, there's a suggestion or a proposal of, well, if we just copy it wholesale into the standard library, then futures can be updated to just re-export it. That's technically a breaking change. It's a pedantic breaking change. It is possible to depend on stream from the two different places if you have the versions mismatched. And so it's mostly considered it's acceptable breaking change, but I don't like it. And it doesn't look like stream is getting moved over wholesale anyways. It likely will get renamed to async iterator, and it's possible that the poll next function is removed and we just have an async fn next if we ever figure out async fn and trait, um, next decade. No, it's supposedly coming soon, but I can't make a plan on soon. I have to make a plan on what exists now. So the stream cargo feature should be removed, and any usage of stream. And what is that? I think, where do we use stream? I think this means I don't know. Does accept have like a from stream? I can't remember. It does. Well, accept is going anyways. Yeah, there's body wrap stream. Accept from stream, which accept is already going away anyways. Does body implement stream? Is there a significant disadvantage to replacing stream with stream 03 instead? I don't really want to have dependencies on unstable things. A name that doesn't have semver concerns. We can also provide stream adapters in hyperutil. Hyperutil doesn't need to go 1.0, so people can still have the, let's see, it does implement stream. And I think that's it. So, I mean, I guess that's body and server. It's kind of easy-ish. But yeah, we could have a stream 03 feature. I don't like it. Eventually it would go away, and then we just have this dangling stream 03 feature that is no longer useful, and couldn't be removed until Hyper 2.0. So, I'm not a fan. And if you really want to wrap things in stream, then we can have a hyperutil stream adapter. So it should still be possible without the wart, I guess. We're also removing these other things, TCP and runtime. So the TCP thing is kind of weird because it's very convenient because you just enable it and then you have just automatic integration with Tokyo TCP stream. But that integration doesn't exist for any other runtime, and we can also provide simple support in hyperutil. So, well, hold on now. You can still just provide a TCP stream because it implements async read, async write. That's right. The TCP stuff is actually for connect and accept. The connector uses TCP stream connect, and the acceptor uses TCP listener. Since we're removing those, we no longer need this. That's right. I had forgotten exactly why we were doing this. That's fairly easy, maybe. And server and client. Yeah. Also removing the runtime feature. Mostly because it's basically the TCP feature and support for Tokyo time. Hey, Pablo. So if we're removing the TCP feature, then that's a big chunk. And if we have the timer stuff that's generic, then we don't need the runtime feature. And the runtime feature was always kind of confusing, anyways. I talk about it towards the top of the roadmap for some motivation. So with the removal of TCP, come on, feature. Cargo. There it is. Does it just show the number, or does it show the? Yeah, it just shows the number. Timer? Come on, Auto. Where'd you go? Timer. Timer. Though this also probably depends on finishing the using this stuff. So Well, basically once we've done 2848, then it's basically just deleted from the cargo toml. So I don't know where to put it. But once it's done, say it's easy, because I mean that's just deleting it from the toml, but it's blocked. All right. These things, yeah. So we've been doing this hour and a half. Still need to file some things for hyperutil. Well, basically like make these things. Should they be in? Yeah, let's make it here. It'd be good to make a label about hyperutil. What do we do that for? Do we do C for crate? What color do we like? It's super important. Likely more important than any of the things we've already done. Maybe purple. Cool. All right. So, a channel implementation that has an API to know when the data has been successfully written. Yeah, this, I'm writing a blog post about this. But basically, right now, so there's the previous post about, not the previous post. There's an issue about splitting up the body type. Right now it's kind of a multi thing. We can still have a multi thing in hyperutil, but right now the kind of channel variant where you can get a sender and then pass the body along, it allows you to send a chunk of data in, but you don't have the ability to know when that data has been written. And that's a frequent request to know, hey, I want to know exactly when the data has been written to the socket, and that way I can I can record metrics, or I can trigger some other event like, hey, yes, this message has been sent to the socket. You never know if like it makes it through all of the proxies and relays, but at least from that machine. And so I believe the way we would do that is having a channel variant that provides a buff. It wraps whatever buff you're passing with the ability to know, like, once it's been advanced to the end, now the thing is done. And so that way you could await a sort of like write and flush, or even just flush, and it would maybe keep an arc count or something like that. Very, very commonly requested. So the whole point of hyperutil is to provide things that many people want. So um, I guess something like that. We can just link to this. Yeah. advance. Okay. So that's a body feature. Hyperutil. I don't think it's hard. And yeah, we'll go ahead and throw it in the 1.0 project. I don't want to say it would block 1.0. Well, I mean, so ideally, Hyper 1.0 has a release candidate later in the summer. I did say in the timeline summer. Summer starts very soon, but towards the latter part of the summer. And that doesn't mean that the docs and all the util stuff is necessarily ready to go immediately, but that um, that the Hyper 1.0 crate itself is ready-ish. We want to have a couple of months of feedback to be able to adapt, and then we can use those couple of months to also improve the docs, write guides, and make more useful utils. Maybe like some of the things that we've removed. Someone like, hey, this is a very common pattern. Yeah, we should add that to hyperutil. So I don't really want that to block being able to launch the 1.0, but I do want us to really strive to make sure that while we made things more flexible, we didn't make things harder. Hopefully, we've made some things easier if you reach for the utility part that makes it easy. So what am I doing? Yeah, we'll go ahead and throw it in here, and then I can adjust that later, I guess. So also in hyperutil, we're mentioning moving the pooling client. We could have like a pool in tower instead, because I mean, there's nothing particularly specific about an HTTP pool versus any kind of connection pool. Which could be pretty useful. There's been trouble in the past knowing exactly how to model it though, because you have a connection in the pool. It's kind of like if you look in tower, the reconnect thing. Um, it basically assumes that when a connection dies because of an error, that it should reconnect. Um, but an error doesn't mean that you should necessarily reconnect. The error may mean, hey, this is never going to work. Should it just loop forever trying to reconnect? How do you tell the pool, um, once over a certain limit, don't keep trying to reconnect things, or after a timeout, start to remove these things? Or how do you signal in a service, pull ready, that the thing didn't die because of something that you did, it just closed gracefully? There's no real way with the error type to say this closed and don't reopen it. So, it'd be cool for us to figure it out, but at the same time, maybe we just start with moving the stuff from hyper into hyperutil, because at the end of the day, people really want a pooling client for hyper, and they don't want to hear, well, we couldn't figure out how to fit it into tower. They just want to get their stuff done. So that may be the first thing that we do, and then figure out how to break it up in tower. So also, another part of the pool is that I guess it is slightly specialized. It's not a simple connecting pool. It has an optimization that I borrowed from, I think it's Go. Go's HTTP connector has this too, where and it really helps when you have a lot of concurrent requests going out. what it will do is if you try and make a request to a destination and the socket doesn't exist, it'll start a connect, but then it'll also tell the pool, hey, let me know if any connection ever becomes available. So, say you have um, 5 connections that are in use, and you're trying to make a 6, and it's like, hey, let me know when another one comes available. What the response is fully read, it goes back to the pool. It can use that immediately, and now you have this connect in progress. Well, then you just want to kind of throw that into the pool for the next one. So that way, then you have 6, but you were able to immediately start reusing one right away. Um, and a generic pool, I don't know, I might not want that, or it might be hard to know. Should I spawn this in the background? How do you make the connect continue? You really don't want to do that kind of race, and then if you win to reuse a connection, then you just drop the in progress connect. Um, there was a bug in Hyper that actually would do that, and someone noticed that it was causing a lot of connection churn, using up a lot of resources. So you really don't want to do that. Um, all that to say that we probably want to start with a pool and hyperutil, and then if we can figure out how to break up pieces into tower, that'd be cool. But first, the users need to be able to use something, and then us in the ivory tower can figure out how to make it abstract. That's cool, but that's the secondary goal. Um, what am I doing? Well, let's say that first. I don't remember if there's any pieces that we want to adjust, but the point of hyperutil is that we can change things more easily. Um, so that's client. Um, not that, it's kind of easy after it's been, well, we'll call it medium. Okay. And then we do a similar, referencing that, well, it'd be kind of cool if in issues, maybe in like here or something, you could set up a, like, uh, I don't know, after you've done this, then you can do this, then you can do this. And maybe there's a fancy view that I can figure out that'll do that. But for now, I just have to hope that people read, because everyone reads, right? All right. Can't forget to make it all 1.0. That's true. No one reads. It's funny. I was talking with my wife a little bit about um, auditing stuff and how training is done. And there's all these insights into how to get people to do things. And through the checklist at the very bottom is, if you've tried all these other things, you can include a note or a warning, but know that nobody reads notes or warnings. So it's preferred that the system itself is designed to stop you from doing the wrong thing. And this is in a non-programming field. This is in like accounting and that sort of stuff. But it's just funny that we love to throw warnings and notes everywhere, and we know at the same time nobody reads them. Oh, that's right. Yeah, we can do. So since we're moving kind of a lot of the Tokio features in Hyper itself, we still want people to be able to easily use it with Tokio, because that's pretty much the main way that people use it. If you look at the percentages, like it's like 98% of people are using it with Tokio or something, uh, possibly higher. I don't know. At least in companies that let me look at their statistics, that's frequently what people are using. So we want to make it super easy. It'd be horrible to take that such a common use case and make it super hard. So um, I'm gonna autocomplete this time. Timer trait. There we go. Um, create hyperutil. I think that's easy. They're just kind of new types that call Tokyo spawn and Tokyo time sleep, right? Um, Maybe I should have a label about runtime stuff, but 1.0, 1.0. And that's right. So one of the cool things, I think, in Hyper Server right now is that you can just, when you're using the builder, you can, do dot with graceful shutdown. Is it dot with? Maybe it's just graceful shutdown. I don't remember. And you can you get this nice ability to tell Hyper, um, hey, start gracefully shutting down the server. And HP1 is kind of boring. It's basically just stop using keep alive, and let all of the existing response. It turns off the listener, and then it stops setting keep alive, so any existing connections close, and it'll finish when all of the connections are done. In HTTP2, it's a bit more cool, and HTTP3 it would be as well, because those protocols have a mechanism for you to send a like a go away frame, and what it does, you send a go away with the max stream and max stream ID, which basically tells the remote client, hey, I'm shutting off. Um, Not immediately, but hey, stop sending me stuff because I want to turn off. So, it's very useful that that exists. Lets you play nice with, uh, Kubernetes and containers restarting you and all that kind of stuff. But it'd be nice to provide a little bit more control. Frequently, what you want that ability, but you also want to be able to say, hey, start graceful shutdown, but in like 5 seconds, if things aren't done, I'm just pulling the plug. So it'd be nice to have a more flexible utility where you're able to say, whenever your signal, if it's from a signal handler or from some other thing, that you can start graceful shutdown, but then you you can also set up a timer like, and in 5 seconds I'm gonna forcefully shut down everything. And that way you could log like 10 connections were still open and I tore them down abruptly or whatever. So we kind of want to move that helper. We don't want to make this harder, but so we want to move it to hyperutil. We want to make it a bit more flexible. A timeout thing would be cool for server sent events. I'm not sure what that's referring to. Is that in Hyper, or did someone ask that in Axum, David? In Hyper. All right. My mind's blank. I kept the connection open forever. Yeah. So the thing is that sometimes people, very experienced people even, it always happens to me. We think that uh, if we start an operation, that it should clearly happen soon. Things should finish. But that's a lie. You can't ever rely, especially if you're dealing with, another remote. You can't ever depend on them actually finishing. You can't depend on the response coming back in a certain amount of time. You can't depend on the body coming back in a certain amount of time. You can't depend on the client going away. You can't depend on it. So um, you have to use timeouts. You have to. But it's not really easy to do so with the graceful shutdown stuff in Hyper at the moment. So this should make it easier for you to do that. And hopefully in the docs we can even point out like an example, like, hey, once you start a graceful shutdown, start a timeout for 10 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever it is. And then, so that way nobody can read it and we can get more issues, of course. Um, and I think after this issue, I think I'm gonna wrap up. Been here about 2 hours. There's probably some more things still to file, but I'll get to that a little later. Um, Certainly always happy to answer any questions in chat or what have you. Um, I've also been wondering, kicking around this idea. Don't kick the speakers, the speaker plugs. I've been kicking around this idea of also potentially streaming some sort of like office hours. So, a place where, maybe an hour a week or something, you can come and bring questions about, hey, I'm trying to do this in Hyper or in Tokyo or Tower or whatever. Um, I'm having this problem, help work through it. Basically, kind of like coming to Discord, but being able to have someone talk to you in person. If that seems like it might be cool, uh, let me know, Discord or in the chat or anything, because that could be kind of cool. I think, you know, internally at AWS, we find that pretty useful. So maybe doing that publicly for people who are willing to share their problems publicly. I mean, open source, right? I think that'd be pretty cool. But maybe it's just me. I think there was an issue that someone uh, wrote about this. Maybe I can just link to it. Hmm, was it this one? Hmm, something like what Sean proposed here. Hey, there we go. Yeah, that's basically exactly what I was talking about. Making a kind of graceful shutdown channel thingy. And then, you just do your connection loop. And then on the signal, then you start shutdown and you await on it when it's fully done, but you could also start a timer. I think this is probably the API we want. Maybe. Copy. Does that work well? I've never used that before. What happens? Hey, cool. It does seem like it'd be cool to figure out a crate for executor and timer stuff. Um, I agree. Um, at the same time, I kind of, there's a benefit to owning it in the crate itself, in that we don't have to depend on a third party. Um, that makes it annoying, somewhat annoying for users, I know, but there hasn't so far. People have tried to come up with like runtime agnostic crates. Like I think it was called Runtime, or um, maybe there was one called Agnostic even, but they never really took off, and so I don't know. If there was an amazing solution, basically within a month or two, we could consider it. But otherwise, I mean, I need to ship, and I can't wait for forever. So making it part of Hyper means that I can control my own destiny and actually get things out for users, which at the end of the day is the most important thing for me is to make sure that the users have the tools that they need. And if some crate, I don't know, maybe standard library, there's been mention of like adding a couple of traits there, or something, if that exists eventually, then um, we can add adapters, you know, that use them and make that even easier. So we're not completely shutting off to it, but just trying to ship. Server hyperutil. I'll just call it medium. Okay. I think that's everything. Well, maybe I should file issues about the unresolved questions. I might do that later or tomorrow. Well, tomorrow's Saturday, but Monday maybe. Um, yeah, I think that's gonna be it. Thanks all for coming and watching me do project management. Could have done it on my own and be lonely, or I can just talk about it. Kind of fun. Um, let's see. So I don't know if this was entertaining at all. Hope it was. Seems like 10ish of you stuck around the whole time, which is amazing. But if you have any questions, um, let me know. You can always catch me in Discord. Yell at me for doing one thing or another, or you can comment on the issues. Also, I wanted to mention if any of these issues, we were going through the roadmap, seem like something that you want to help do, um, want to help implement it, then that'd be awesome. This is a group thing, a community thing, and um, so the more that help out, uh, the better. It's not something that just one person or a couple people can carry, but the more that help carry it, the more ideas we get, the more diverse solutions we find, and the more we take care of general users instead of just two people that happen to work at a certain company and only needed it a certain way. It's a lot better to get the diverse opinions. Anyways, yeah, thanks for spending your time with me, and we'll do this again, I hope. See ya.